Hello everyone, it's the storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? The Identity Thief. This is the hunter's badge of glory, that he protects and tends his quarry, hunts with honor, as is due, and through the beast to God is true. Jagermeister by Oscar von Riesenthal, taken from the back of a Jägermeister bottle, half full. I am left to imagine the circumstances of a most unusual case, which has the Grimlace's handiwork written all over it. The Grimlace has stolen another victim's visage and memories, leaving her a withered amnesiac. She was wandering ghost-like amid the streets of Frankfurt, with no idea how to return or where she called home. My name is Hildegard Köppen, I tell her, but everyone calls me Hilda. Pleased to meet you. And she trails off, unable to remember her own name. It's okay, my dear. This is all quite normal, I tell her. I turn on my dictaphone and make my report. It is 23:36 in the evening. The patient's name is Greta Thunderberg. The patient is approximately 32 years of age, according to confirmed medical records. Greta presents with symptoms of sudden onset retrograde amnesia. She reports no memory of her whereabouts, or how she reported to Polizeireiterstaffel HE off the River Main. She complains of persistent tinnitus, disorientation, and a total loss of recent memory, as well as an inability to recall various aspects of her personality, or apparently her own name. When asked if she is a serious person or a fun-loving one, she says, "I hardly know myself at all. I couldn't say." When asked if she enjoys large gatherings and social occasions, she says, "I should like to try it and see." She is completely flat. When asked, "Are you upset about your present condition?" she says, "I feel fine." Her face is frozen, as if she has had an excessive amount of Botox serum injected. There are neither any signs of physical trauma nor any indication of the use of surgical instruments, and the blood work is normal. My diagnosis is that there has been a sudden hypoxic event and a hardening of neural connections occasioned by calcification from exposure to chemical antagonists, causing sudden onset retrograde amnesia, all of which is consistent with a Grimlace attack. I release the patient back to her police escort, who thanks me and is on his way. Brainy, that's me. Cut it, treat it, study it. I do it all. Neurosurgeon, neurologist, and neuroscientist. Check, check, and check. And you can add dissect it to that list. Did you know that forgetting is actually part of the learning process? I'll bet you didn't. But not everyone has brains on their mind like I do. My true calling, however, is the hunt for the grim lace. I have been stalking this freak of nature for over a decade, but this is the first time that I have ever been able to anticipate catching my quarry and finally seeing what it is made of. We are the Knights of Kadosh, a sect of the Scottish Rite. We are closely aligned with our brethren, the Knights of Tavistock in St. Petersburg. We hunt monsters. And my special assignment these many years is to rid the world of the dreaded Grimlace. After all this time, I have finally found a witness to the first Grimlace attack. Just past 1 o'clock in the morning, Agatha is coming to life. The tea kettle is whistling in the kitchen, and Agatha hums as she pours herself a cup, her hand shaking as she tips the kettle. Although Agatha was a precise woman and always had her hands perfectly manicured, the ends of her nails are growing out with ragged abrasions, and the nail polish is badly chipped. Our shared apartment is a high-rise at 140 West in West End Sud. There is a view of the city skyline and the Taunus Mountains beyond. "Where have you been, Heidi?" "I've been worried," Agatha asks. "Interviewing a victim of an attack," I say with a shrug. "I called you 2 hours ago. Remember, Mum? But what about your dinner with Renee? Did you forget?" Agatha asks. "That was last week, Mother." "Is someone changing your calendar?" she asks, hands on her hips. "You know there are a lot of doctors that want your position in the Faculty of Medicine at Goethe Universität, who would do anything to get you out of there." "Oh, Mother, no need to worry about me. Did you watch your show?" Is it already 8? Agatha asked. "Mother, it is nearly 2 in the morning," I tell her, and walk into my study. "I have to finish some work, Mum. Get some sleep." I can barely stand to look at her when I can't do anything about it. My mother was a fine physician and a woman of prominence. She has now been reduced to this dwelling invalid who sulks about being imprisoned by her own mind. I know she won't turn in until the sun comes down. I have given up trying to get her into a normal sleep schedule. After all, it is not as if I have one myself. She'll just sit on the balcony now, staring into space, as if the vista of the horizon will give her a chance to remember that she is in the process of forgetting. It has taken nearly a decade, but I am able to locate the stagehand who was present the night of the first Grimlace attack. The English theater was playing Saint Joan of the Stockyards, and Diril Verloren had top billing on the playbill. Louise recalled. "I've heard of that play. He was playing the meat-packing magnate, Pierpont Mahler," Louise says. "And you were there, watching from behind the curtains, during the entire play?" I ask, jotting notes. "Not the whole time," Louise says. "Where did you go?" I ask. "At one point, I ended up going out back in the alley to have a cigarette, and found the understudy, Raj, speaking with a strange-looking woman," Louise says. "We will come back to that," I tell him, blowing at some hair that has come untucked from my ponytail and is dangling over my left eye. What did Diril look like? Diril was a tall man, about 6'4", just stunning. He had a lean, lanky build. His coiled hair hung down in a shag cut. He had large, straight, white teeth that gleamed in the stage lighting. He had really bad ADHD, with a cutting, manic intellect. He was always gesticulating and animated, and always at an 11 out of 10. Luis says, "Was he under the influence of anything?" I ask. "Other than his own self-importance and fame, you mean?" "Amphetamines. Adderall was pretty standard. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner," Luis said. "I think that addiction is an impermanent solution to a permanent problem." "How was the performance?" I ask. "He was a star." I remember his voice rising to a crescendo as he said, "Oh, everlasting slaughter." Nowadays, things are no different from prehistoric times, when they bloodied each other's heads with iron bars. "It was quite the performance," Luis said. The words set off a spark of revelation as I struggle to understand my prey. I think of the price of fame for a performer. One must corral and direct a revelatory energy. From the crushing terror of the stage, the spotlight that leaves one exposed and vulnerable, an artist must mine this energy for a competence that once achieved is received, applauded, and becomes the most addictive of drugs. Yet the act is separate from the actor. The skill is separate from the skilled. The applause is not love, but mere recognition. This is not connection. There is a deep spiritual appetite in all of us for true connection. Nothing looks like a better cure for being invisible than fame. And yet, fame is the great invisibility cloak, a mask more isolating than a veil of solitude, for it expunges the person altogether, elevating their vocation and placing all value in the performance of their craft. The person behind the act starves and is strangled and becomes a slave to their role. I think of how similar this is to my mother's spells of dementia and the forgetfulness brought on by Alzheimer's. In between those shining moments for her when she has clarity of thought, in between those turns upon the stage, both die and fade into oblivion. Returning from my daydreams, I ask, did anyone have any reason to wish him harm? Just Rach Egeman, a little worm of a man. That is what we called him. Irm the Worm, ever since he played some slithering stock character named Irmin. Name just stuck. Anyway, Rach was next in line for the male lead on one show after another, and he couldn't get anywhere with his career with Deerl in his way. He had the acting chops, but he wasn't a star. He was short, unmemorable looking, just average in every way, whereas Deerl was extraordinary all around. It was never a fair contest between the two of them. And you say you saw Rach speaking with someone in the alley during the show? I ask. Why, yes, in fact, we knew her. She was a stage designer, a mystic gypsy from the outskirts named Emile Scioli. A real loner, if there ever was one. She was a sharp-featured woman of about 70, thin as a bird, with a long pea coat. Always wore a blue amethyst Hamza on her neck. She was smoking a Marlboro cigarette impatiently, Luis recalls. "Did you overhear what they said?" I ask. "Yes. Did you bring what I asked?" she said, stamping her foot against the bitter cold. Then he responded, "I have it." That was it. And then he rushed back inside with something in his hand. "So what happened next?" I asked. At some point, toward the end of the play, Dirrell collapsed. When he came to, he was like a man possessed. He began pacing the stage, and then as he looked out over the audience, he screamed at them as if a wild animal baring its teeth and growling to keep a threat at bay. "And do you know what caused this transformation?" I ask. "No one does," Luis says. "Are there any working theories?" I inquire. "There is a rumor that Aisha was deeply jealous. Apparently, Rach had originally been cast as Pierpont Mahler. It was all settled. The playbill was printed. But then Dirrell called the theater director and said he was interested in the part. They couldn't refuse. So Dirrell upstaged Rach right when he had his big break. Rach could not forgive it. He went off in long tirades. Some believe that Emile Scioli, the gypsy, was part of a group that worshipped the Croton Duvel, the toad devil. They had tattoos of toads stamped on their eyelids and believed that this deity possessed the ability to erase memory, to turn invisible, and to walk among men as a blind wanderer, spreading the void of loss among the people. Some believe that toads are poor sinners serving a penance of tears and relegated to the dank, dark places and to a life of slime and bugs in order to purge their souls. Wandering spirits in an earthly purgatory, the grips and stage hands, who know Rach best, said that he has a pearl toad statue given to him by Emile Scioli that has the words inscribed on it, which say, "Beng Tasser Toot." And they say the toad has a golden choker collar on it and is somehow connected to the affliction poor Dirrell suffered. They say that Rach guards the toad statue with his life, and if it is ever destroyed, Dirrell will be healed. This is very helpful, Luis. That is a lot to digest. I'll be in touch if I have further questions. I tell him, the grim lace has no shadow. It walks below the street lights in the alley, donning a black cloak. Its hands and face are green. Its face has no contour, just a flat canvas, until it dawns the visage of one of its victims. As the grim lace slinks through the streets of Frankfurt by the train station, the streets are filled with drunks, prostitutes, and panhandlers. An old man sits with a bottle, huddled in a corner by some trash overflowing from a dumpster. He has rags about his shoulders, but his face is thin and handsome below his rugged, unkempt beard. The Grimlace turns his green blank face to the man, who looks at him transfixed, and the Grimlace latches on to him. A beam of translucent, opaque jelly forms between them, the bond, and the Grimlace slinks in, bends to his knee, and draws out the man's visage, the man's memories, and shrinks within his robes to the height of his victim. Renewed, he stands to his feet, like a performer taking on a new role, and gains comfort in his own skin, lets the memories inhabit him, and he throws off his cloak, strolling into the square. I receive a call from the detective. He tells me that there has been a beggar who has gone missing. His daughter has come to the precinct to make the report. He tells me that the incident occurred near the train station. I thank him, and I am off with my hunting bag to find the Grimlace. The cloaked creature, with the green hue to his skin, is pacing along the entrance to the train station, where the beggar used to set up each morning. In my bag is a mirror, a cattle prod, and a Sig Sauer 45mm pistol. I find a bank of deep shadows by the corner and observe my mark. The Grimlace does not seem to know that it is adorning the persona of another human being. It seems utterly lost in its contrivance, cursed, as Louise had said. It seems to be in agony every bit as much as the woman Greta who came to my clinic the other day. Does this creature sleep? It lets out a blood-curdling chortle. Oh my God! The beggar must have been schizophrenic. The creature is hearing voices. I see the creature begin the painful, agonizing pantomime of a schizoid talking to himself and arguing a rationalization audibly, projecting failures to a second personality or a persecutor. This is one of the most common psychotic breaks, where the mind cannot accept its own failures and must personify or anthropomorphize its afflictions. If you hadn't told on me, I would have kept my job. You were drunk. Drunk. It was you. You sneaky FK, you falsely accused me. You went to Lars and made a fuss. And see where I am now. I hope you are proud of yourself. Rat, rat, rat. And you are the one. You. A drunk. An ingrate. A lazy, good-for-nothing piece of La 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 la. Shut up, shut up. Get away from me. Police, police. I am being attacked. Ow, ow, stop. Get away. I didn't touch you. No, stop. Get away. Violator, violation. Stop hurting me. Stop talking, you dirty snitch. I watched the Grimlace rummaging back and forth, gesticulating manically, screaming, yelling, and talking to himself in a fierce blame jeopardy that I know from experience can go on for many hours. The paranoid spell of a tortured mind trying to reconcile an unacceptable fate and a cruel, unforgiving world that hands down curses and bruises with indiscriminate malice. I could find him again soon. I could make a quick detour. He would be going on like this for hours, if not days, until he was arrested, which would just land him down at the precinct. Back at the English theater, I find Rach Egeman's dressing room. He is now playing the part of the lead in every play. He has ascended to the pinnacle of the profession. Ah, my adoring fan. What? Do you want me to sign the playbill? Yes, can I come in? I ask. Here, come sit, he says with glee, but I do not sit. I take out the cattle prod and place it on the carotid artery on his neck, and with a small squeeze, he shrieks and falls to the floor. I begin my search. After a few minutes, I find the toad talisman and stow it in my bag. Back by the train station, Dirrell is still going on and on. I take out my gun and the toad statute. I place the statute on the ground. I fire a single shot, and the talisman shatters into 1,000 pieces. I look over at Dirrell and see his face suddenly return to its natural state. I walk up to him cautiously. I am Hilda, I say. I've been searching for you a long time. Where am I? Dirrell asks. The train station is just down there. What do you remember? I ask. I don't know, Dirrell says. You must be disoriented, I say. It's more than that. I don't even know who I am, Dirrell says. Quite right. But who among us really does? We all wear 1,000 masks and scarcely know where the real person begins and the artifice ends. Don't you think? Who are you? Dirrell asks. Let's go back to my clinic and see if we can't get this sorted out, I tell him, as we walk together in the eerie alleys of a lovely Frankfurt night. We pass by the English theater, and I watch as Dirrell's eyes sparkle with intrigue. What are they playing tonight? Dirrell asks. Cockroach Girl. The floor underneath. Barry shuddered and swayed as they took a tight corner. The clattering whoosh of the dark tunnel drowned out the tired silence of the other commuters. Barry's sweaty hand threatened to slide loose from its cold metal pole, so he adjusted his grip and tried not to think about what had made it so sticky. Multiple people had relieved themselves in this car over the course of the day. The sickly sweet mixture of vomit and tangy excrement churned his stomach. Threatening to dislodge the chopped salad he'd had for lunch that afternoon, Barry felt the gray-haired woman next to him shift away from his lifted arm in disgust. He enjoyed the small reprieve of the starchy fabric peeling away from the wetness of his underarm, where it had been chafing all day. There was nothing to be done, he thought bitterly, unless she wanted him falling into her lap. He could smell the baby powder wafting up from her hair, and the crusty perfume from a bottle that should have been thrown out years ago. Barry threatened to go flaccid at the idea of her wrinkled, fat body jiggling under her itchy wool cardigan. She should be so lucky, he thought with a sneer. Barry turned his attention back to the more desirable object of his affection, the girl at the other end of the car. He felt hot blood rush toward the front of his groin, making it bulge against his tight polyester dress pants so hard he could feel the metal zipper of his fly dig into him. Barry couldn't take his eyes off her proper legs pushed together in an effort to take up as little space as possible and attract as little attention as possible. Her tight, office-appropriate skirt hugged her hips and thighs, exposing bare legs, freshly shaven. He could tell from here she squirmed under his gaze. Barry adjusted his pants, even though no one on the bus was looking at him. He liked feeling like a potential threat. Barry knew he wasn't trash like the vermin around him. They all followed the rules. They went to work in their maze-like offices. They ate paste from tubes that barely resembled food. Humans were supposed to be apex predators. But the people who pressed in around him, jostled by the winding track, were so distant from their glorious biological potential, so detached from the instincts sharpened by thousands of generations of violence, that they had allowed their senses to dull irreparably from disuse, content to compete for scraps like the insects they were. But not Barry. He was in touch with his higher animal self. He used his God-given senses every day. And today, they were homing in on a target worthy of his attention. A girl he could tell would be a challenge. A girl who would force him to prove his manhood. A girl unlike the rest of them. This girl had her attention not on her phone, but on a book open in her lap. Barry craved the opportunity to see the title she was so engrossed in. He made a mental note to get closer to her when she got up for her stop. He also felt a surge of jealousy towards that book. He wanted to be the one who was in her lap, pulling her head back by the hair, taking what was his. The train jostled again as it went through another turn. The girl shifted uncomfortably in her seat. She knew he was watching her, yet she refused to meet his gaze. Barry found himself starting to get angry at her insolence. He deserved her attention. As if in response to his escalating need, the girl brought her hand up to her skirt. Barry's attention became rapt and utterly focused. The hairs on his arm stood up in arousal as he watched her, not daring to move, wondering if this was real. The girl reached underneath her tight little skirt and squirmed around. She had to be putting on a show. Otherwise, why would she do this? Barry glanced around, checking to see if anyone else was watching. But no one seemed to notice. The girl reached her hand all the way up between her legs, her expression unchanging, her eyes never leaving her book. Barry was now stroking himself outside his pants. He didn't care if anyone saw him. She was making him do this. The filthy little. The girl removed her hand from between her legs and pulled her arm out from under her skirt. She was holding something in the flat palm of her hand. Barry squinted and peered closer to see what it was. He stepped back in shock and confusion. Sitting in the girl's hand, antennae twitching, was a thick, 4-inch long, glittering cockroach. Its hard-shelled body, spiny legs, and beady head were unmistakable. The girl let it fall to the floor of the train, all without removing her eyes from her book. The cockroach skittered towards Barry. He let out an involuntary yelp that caused some passengers to finally look up and notice him. A businessman unceremoniously stepped on the cockroach, smushing its guts into an unrecognizable blob. The girl never looked up from her book. Barry wasn't a bad guy. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he needed answers. So, when the girl got off at her stop, he followed her. They emerged from the underground station onto a dark street. There was no moon out that night, and the glow of the street lamps were obscured by overgrown trees. The girl walked ahead of him, handbag slung over her shoulder. When they were finally far enough from the main road, where no one could see or hear them, he picked up his pace to catch up with her. Barry's footsteps crunched the leaves and twigs on the sidewalk, so his approach was anything but silent. He could see her tense up. Barry grabbed her by the shoulder and spun her around to look at him. He took a step back in surprise. There was no fear in the girl's eyes. It unsettled him. They usually looked more scared. He pressed on anyway. "What was that back there?" Barry asked. "What was what?" "That thing. Did you pull a cockroach out from between your—" Barry gestured helplessly at his own crotch. He couldn't believe what he was asking. "I think you should leave me alone." The girl turned around to continue walking, but Barry wasn't done with her. He grabbed her arm. "I think you should answer my question." "I don't owe you anything," the girl said, looking him dead in the eye. This disturbed Barry more than he cared to admit. They usually struggled to avoid his gaze. He was in uncharted territory, but he couldn't turn back now. His cock twitched hungrily. Maybe this could be fun, Barry tried to convince himself. He could break her. That would make this feel more earned, more challenging. He had been starting to get bored with his targets. Centuries of comfort and complacency had left the modern woman weak and pathetic. "I'm not done with you yet," he told her. Barry pushed the girl up against the retaining wall next to the sidewalk. This was usually when they screamed, but the girl didn't scream. She pushed him back. "Get off of me," she said forcefully, but Barry would not. He could not. He had come so far. He needed to know. He wasn't just here to satisfy his own primal needs. No, not this time. He needed to know what she had down there, what she was hiding from him, how she was able to produce. The girl need him in the groin, but Barry was not an amateur at this. He expertly leaned back to avoid a direct hit while still keeping his forearm against her chest, pinning her up against the wall. He pushed her knee to the side. "Hold still," Barry told her through gritted teeth. He was starting to get angry. "This will all be over soon." At last, he managed to reach up under her skirt and pull her underwear to the side. She had stopped struggling. He was grateful. Once they were convinced that there was no way out of this, they always ended up enjoying it. They would never admit it, but he could tell that they did. The girl was looking at him again, calmly. "Don't do that," Barry told her. "Don't do what?" "Look at me like that." The girl laughed. "You can't control me," she told him. "You're a dead man." Barry slapped her across the face. It was his turn to laugh. It was a humorless, forced laugh, mostly designed to disguise his fear. "You don't know who I am," he told her, more to convince himself than her. "You don't know my name. They'll never find me." Barry put his fingers in the space between her legs, relaxing into his victory. She was smooth, freshly shaven, just as he had predicted. But there was something else in there he could feel as he unzipped his pants and got himself out and ready. Something plasticky. A Nuva ring, perhaps. Or he didn't have much time to guess. The thing crawled straight out of the girl's vagina and onto his hand. Barry recoiled and flung it to the ground with a yell. What the fuck?" "Does that answer your question?" said the girl. "Crazy bitch." Barry's head was spinning. He had no idea how she did this magic trick, and he had no desire to stick around and find out. He grabbed his dick to put it back into his pants, but the girl grabbed onto him harder. "Hang on," she said. "I'm not done with you yet." She parted her knees invitingly. The girl once again pulled her lacy underwear to the side, fully exposing herself. Barry watched in horror as a beady little head and spiny legs clawed their way out of her, the antennae releasing themselves from her depths with a little bounce. It eagerly ran down the inside of her thigh, down her leg, all the way to the ground. It was followed by another, and another, and another. Some of them scampered down her thighs to the ground, then over to Barry's shoes, then up his pant leg. He tried to pull away, but she had his hard dick in her hand with a vice grip and wouldn't let him go. Why did it stay hard while he was so afraid? Why wouldn't his body listen to him? Barry didn't want this. Other cockroaches climbed out of her and crawled up her thigh, over the edge of her skirt, up her chest, and onto her shoulder, down her arm, all the way to his exposed flesh. They swarmed all over his body. Barry screamed. They made their way up his neck to his face, their delicate, spiny legs tingling his skin, causing Barry to jerk in violent fear and revulsion. He shut his mouth tight and continued to scream with it closed. No matter. The insects pushed in between, prying his lips open. Barry finally succeeded in yanking his penis out of her hands. He didn't care if it broke or if she peeled all of the skin off of it. He just needed to get out of there. But the cockroaches kept coming. The swarm grew bigger and bigger, finding their way underneath his clothes, into every orifice available to them. They overpowered him. Barry couldn't hold them out any longer. He covered his ears, but that left his eyes and nose and rectum exposed. Barry stumbled to his feet and fell to the ground. He choked on them. He could feel them with every sense of his body and brain, wriggling their way inside of him, unwelcome, filthy, suffocating. Time slowed for Barry. He knew only fear and blinding pain. The girl watched, impassive, as Barry lay twitching on the ground. During those final minutes of consciousness, Barry was freed from any stress, repression, self-loathing, or desire. It took 7 minutes for him to die. After Barry's body grew still, the girl picked her purse up off the ground where it had fallen. She hung it back on her shoulder and continued up the sidewalk on her way home. She left her babies behind to nibble at his corpse. Eventually, they got bored. The cockroaches scampered off into the night to scavenge for bits of food, hoisted into the dumpsters behind the dimly lit bars and tightly locked apartment buildings. Their grotesque image kept them safe. Fear kept them hidden. Disgust allowed them to move freely, unbothered in the shadows of the city. Like the girl, they were survivors, watchers. The asylum's security surveillance room was a claustrophobic chamber, adorned with peeling wallpaper, crumbling shelves stacked with aged records, a small wooden desk, and an uncomfortable metal chair that creaked under the most minute amount of weight. A single rotary dial telephone sat on the desk. A thick layer of dust covered every surface but the desk and chair. The dim overhead light bulb flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows across the aging linoleum floor that peeled in the corners. The centerpiece of this dilapidated room was a massive wall lined with outdated, grayscale CCTV monitors. Each monitor displayed a different section of the asylum, a haunting panorama of deserted hallways, medical examination rooms furnished with rusting metal beds and equipment, large dining areas, office spaces, and various other rooms possibly used for forms of recreation. The monitors were ancient, relics of a bygone era. Their screens emitted a faint, sickly glow that seemed to exaggerate the shadows lurking in the corners of the room. The images displayed were grainy, distorted, and pixelated. A small handwritten label accompanied each screen, indicating the location of the video feed. The cameras themselves, once cutting-edge technology, were now obsolete and barely functional, occasionally losing connection for a few seconds at a time. The crackling audio of static from the occasional disconnected video feeds added to the eerie ambiance. It was as if the very essence of the asylum had seeped into the wires and circuits, imbuing an unsettling presence into the surveillance system. James was 2 hours into his new job and already regretted accepting the position. As a college dropout, struggling to make ends meet, the job posting for a part-time security surveillance officer with great pay was almost too good to be true. There were no certifications or education required to apply. The agency didn't even require any previous experience. The pay was nearly double the current minimum wage. The only downside to the posting had been the hours. From 9 o'clock at night until 5 in the morning, James was surprised to find he was the only one to accept the position following the interview. Unwilling to let such a good paying opportunity pass, he agreed to all terms he was presented during his interview and had no follow-up questions of his own when asked. As such, he was hired on the spot and given the time and address of his first shift. Looking back, James realized he should have asked at least a few questions, such as where he would be working and why no one else had accepted the position following the interview. Lunaria Sanitarium, built in 1920, was nestled deep within the forests of the Pacific Northwest. The nearest city, taking at least an hour and a half by car, was Portland, Oregon. The hospital consisted of 3 separate buildings. The central 4-story building contained the medical rooms, recreational suites, and other administrative offices. Each 2-story wing building housed bedrooms with minimal furniture, a dining hall complete with rows of tables and chairs, and basements with locked holding rooms. Only the hallway leading to the doors for the holding rooms contained a camera in each basement. Every room in the sanitarium still contained original furniture from the time it was abandoned, as if all inhabitants simply left for the day and never returned. Vacated in the late 50s, the entire property was left untouched for nearly 7 decades. Courtyards, fields, and small farming patches were overgrown, nearly reclaimed by the forest whose land it was built upon. Despite the impending vegetation, the buildings themselves were surprisingly in good condition, despite the rust, mold, and rotting surfaces. Upon relieving the daytime officer at 9 o'clock, a gangly old man who provided no explanation of his duties other than not to fall asleep. James settled in for a long night. The metal chair behind the desk protested against his weight, and he made a mental note to bring a cushion for his next shift, figuring he would need help staying awake and being kept from boredom. James brought a backpack stocked with snacks, energy drinks, his handheld gaming console, and a few books his sister had lent him. He had debated whether or not he would get in trouble for playing games or reading while on duty. But how hard could watching screens of empty rooms be? Surely he would get in more trouble for falling asleep rather than being partially distracted. Gaze darting between monitors on the wall before him, a sense of unease settled deep within his gut. The screens were grainy and out of focus, an occasional ripple in the feed, giving the effect of movement and catching his attention. The wall of monitors was so wide that he had trouble viewing every screen without having to turn his head, causing the screens of the opposite side to disappear from his focus entirely. As the minutes ticked by with no changes, James relaxed and pulled his gaming console from his pack. He kept the volume low, just in case, and was careful to peek at the screens between each level of his game. The few games he owned that didn't require internet connection quickly lost his interest. He glanced at the time on his cell phone. 10:30. An hour and a half into his shift, and he was already bored. As James reached for his backpack, the scratchy sound of static caught his attention. One of the screens in the top row, which was labeled East Wing Dining Hall, showed nothing but black, gray, and white interference. Heart leaping into his throat, James watched as the lines danced across the screen. Less than a handful of seconds later, the feed resumed, and he was presented again with long rows of tables and chairs. Breathing a sigh of relief, James slumped back into his chair, the metal groaning in protest. Waiting for his heart rate to settle, James took in the creepy aspects of the dining hall, showing through the feed. Long, wooden tables made up a majority of the space, looking to be made of one solid piece of wood. James could only imagine how heavy they must be. Chairs dotted the spaces between the tables, all pulled out and looked to have been haphazardly pushed around, a few even laying on their sides. In the far left corner of the room, a single door stood open, leading to the hallway beyond. James's attention fixated on the chairs. Had they been pushed out from the tables before? Racking his memory, he thought that they had been pushed in, not that he had paid any special attention to the small details. Clearing his thoughts with a shake of his head, he pulled one of his energy drinks out and popped the cap. Perhaps he just remembered wrong. While sipping the carbonated liquid energy, James pulled out a notebook and pen and began taking notes on the condition of each room, more for the peace of his own mind and to pass the time than any other reason. The shadow, the night, was silent, draped in an inky darkness that swallowed the world outside the small security room. I sat alone, surrounded by an array of flickering screens that illuminated my face in a ghastly blue glow. The hum of the surveillance equipment was the only sound in the room, its monotony broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling or the distant wail of a siren. I was the lone sentinel, tasked with safeguarding the premises during the bewitching hours of the night shift. Hours had passed since I settled into my chair, my eyes diligently scanning the labyrinthine halls and desolate rooms of the building. Everything appeared as it should, empty, lifeless, and eerily quiet. But as the clock ticked deeper into the night, a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach. The air seemed charged with a palpable tension, as if something sinister lurked just beyond the reach of the camera lenses. I leaned forward, adjusting my seat and peering closer at one of the monitors. In the dim light, the corridor appeared to stretch endlessly, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long, ominous shadows on the walls. As my eyes darted across the screen, I saw a movement, a mere blur at the edge of the frame. My breath caught in my throat, and I focused on the camera, my heart pounding. There, in the grainy black and white footage, was a figure. It was tall and gaunt, its features obscured by shadows. The figure moved slowly, almost purposefully, down the hallway, its gait uneven and unsettling. I squinted, trying to make out any distinguishing features, but the face remained hidden, shrouded in darkness. A shiver crept up my spine as I grabbed the radio at my side. "Central, this is security. I've got a visual on an unidentified person in Corridor C. I need backup." Static crackled before a voice responded, thick with sleep. "Copy that. We're sending someone your way. Stay on the line." I nodded, my eyes never leaving the screen. The figure continued its eerie saunter, disappearing momentarily from one camera's view, only to reappear on another. It seemed to be toying with me, always staying just out of clear sight. A phantom in the night. Minutes dragged on like hours as I awaited the arrival of my colleagues. The figure persisted in its haunting stroll, growing closer to the main entrance with every passing moment. I gripped the edges of the desk, my knuckles turning white, and watched in dread as it reached the lobby. As if sensing my gaze, the figure turned its head toward the camera, and I gasped. Its eyes, 2 points of cold, blue light, glowed in the darkness, fixated on the lens, as if it could see me. I recoiled, my heart pounding so loudly that I could hear it in my ears. "Central, it's looking at the camera," I stammered into the radio, I need someone here now. The response was a garbled mess of static and fragmented words. Desperation clawed at me as I watched the figure approach the security room. It moved with an unnatural grace, its movements silent and deliberate. My fingers fumbled for the door lock, and I managed to secure it just as the figure reached the hallway outside. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room, and I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow and rapid. I could hear its footsteps now, soft but deliberate, as it approached the door. Each step sent a chill down my spine, and I prayed that the lock would hold. The figure stopped just outside the door, and I held my breath, willing myself to be invisible. Through the frosted glass window, I saw its silhouette, tall and imposing. Its hand reached out, fingers curling around the doorknob. I bit down hard on my lip to stifle a scream. My entire body tensed, ready to bolt at a moment's notice. Seconds stretched into an eternity before the figure withdrew its hand, and I heard its footsteps fading away down the corridor. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. The building seemed to groan and sigh around me, the very walls whispering secrets that I couldn't comprehend. Summoning my courage, I cautiously unlocked the door and peeked into the hallway. It was empty, devoid of any signs of the figure. I hesitated for a moment before venturing out, my flashlight casting shaky beams of light across the walls. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and I could feel unseen eyes watching my every move. I retraced the figure's steps, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Each flickering light and distant sound sent my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that the figure was still there, just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I finally reached the lobby, my eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. The room was still, the silence broken only by the distant wail of sirens. I let out a shaky breath, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. Whatever had been in the building with me was gone, but its presence lingered, a haunting memory etched into the very walls. I made my way back to the security room, my steps quickening with each passing moment. As I entered, I glanced at the monitors, half expecting to see the figure staring back at me. But the screens were empty, showing only the empty halls and deserted rooms. I sank into my chair, my hands trembling as I reached for the radio. Central, this is security. I think it's gone. I don't know what it was, but it's gone now. The response was a crackle of static. And then a voice came through, tinged with concern. Are you all right? Do you need medical assistance? I hesitated for a moment before shaking my head, even though I felt far from all right. No, I'm fine. Just shaken up. I'll be okay. The sun began to rise, casting a faint light through the windows and dispelling the darkness that had settled over the building. My relief was palpable, but the memory of that night would forever haunt my dreams. I had come face to face with something beyond explanation, something that defied logic and reason. As the day shift arrived to relieve me, I gathered my belongings and made my way to the exit. The building, once familiar and comforting, now felt alien and menacing. I stepped out into the daylight, the warmth of the sun, a stark contrast to the cold grip of fear that still clung to me. I glanced back at the building one last time, my eyes drawn to the security room window. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement inside, a shadowy figure standing amidst the monitors. But it was gone in an instant, leaving me to wonder if it had ever been there at all. I walked away, my footsteps quickening with every step. The world around me seemed to blur, the events of the night replaying in my mind like a nightmare. I didn't know what I had encountered, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. Some things, it seemed, were better left in the darkness, where they belonged. The exodus of the corporate zombies. I harbor a secret fantasy that the lot of us are undead zombies, shuffling corpses, slavish, insentient lumps of meat, navigating the public transportation system by reflex, devoid of any signs of higher-level cognitive function. I am waiting on a train platform to board the Long Island Railroad. The platform of Riverhead Station is indistinguishable from the platforms of any of the multitude of other trains run by the Metropolitan Transit Authority. The branching arteries all lead back to the beating heart. New York, New York. The Big Apple. The sunshine is what really gets me down. Those brief moments in the sun are the most depressing part of my day. Before I board my metal coffin and descend into the bowels of the subterranean tunnels that lead back to the source. Boarding the train, we all nod to one another. There is Caitlin. She is wearing a sleek pantsuit, pale as an unbasted Christmas turkey. There is Vinny. He has quit smoking. He gnaws on a smoking cessation chew stick. Caitlin takes her usual seat, clicks open her laptop immediately, and responds to an email. It's 6:19 a.m., and I'm working, she says to her superiors. Vinny is a cell phone guy. He calls some labor union flunky and barks some pointless orders to let the men know he's awake and he's watching. There's Brandon. He is a Wall Street Journal guy, a reader. He opens that paper wide. In the seat next to me, his elbows brush my shoulder, and that infernal paper smells like paper mâche and peat moss, pulpy ammonia, and sulfite. smells like hell. I get off at Grand Central Terminal Madison and exit through the bowels of the city. Bodies flow out of the trains when the doors open, like the gates of navigation dams, allowing water to flow down through canals to the next elevation. The corpus of the flowing bodies splits at little tributaries, some leading to the surface, where I am headed, others lower, deeper into the subterranean dungeon. I walk north from 47th Street to 53rd Street on Lexington Avenue. I blend in and amid a stopping and starting throng of mindless streetwalkers that navigate communally like a school of fish or a flock of birds. We split at a street crossing with an Uber that didn't make the turn and is blocking pedestrian traffic, blocking the box. Then we swerve en masse around a homeless man sleeping on a cardboard box in the middle of the sidewalk, with a hat by his feet and a sign saying, "Homeless, humiliated veteran, please help." We do all of this mindlessly in comatose prisons, our unremitting corpses dragging us along. Our thoughts are closed off by the virus in a faraway chamber, unreachable and fortified. No one speaks to one another. We walk in silence, heads lowered, zombified bodies still donning the starched and pressed suits of the living. Pallid faces are directed away from the searing sunshine. We are still draped in living, breathing skin that gives the appearance of life. I arrive at my building. I walk through the gray-streaked white marble lobby with a matching gray-streaked white marble reception desk, flash my badge, and place it on the turnstile into the building. I take the elevator down to the basement level. I stare blankly ahead with the feeling that the whole world is asleep. I walk into the dingy maintenance office suite, a shut-up room with pumped-in air, and I am back in another subterranean dungeon, away from the things of man. "Hey, duct tape," Greg says, nodding. Greg has thick-framed, high-prescription glasses and an unassuming brown suit. He is a heavily balding, 40-something, Clark Kent-looking guy with paler skin and a bit of a gut. "Hi, Sam," Gina says with a smile. She is about 30 and single, and wearing a floral blouse over a casual jean skirt, clear leggings, and pumps. Gina has flowing black hair and dark eyebrows. She has a little rouge on her face and dark carmine lipstick. Gina smells like fresh laundry, with a spritz of lily flowers, waxy, light, and verdant. I can taste her on my tongue like a fruity Jolly Rancher candy. Back when I was still living, I crushed on her hard. "Morning," I say. The placard on my desk reads, "Facilities Maintenance Specialist." I report to the facilities operations manager, Jeremy. It is quite possibly the most useless job of all time. I can hear Mike Rowe's voice on a useless jobs special describing the stupidity of this position in vivid detail. Jeremy also sits in the same room as Greg, Gina, and I. Because why not house multiple levels of redundant management, literally right on top of one another? That isn't a rhetorical question. It is a statement I made once that cost me another job. Jeremy is on a Zoom call about a pesky HVAC issue with the 40-ton AC unit and chiller. This seems to confirm my suspicion that we are undead creatures, with ventilation just as stagnant as that offered to Subway. Rats. Jeremy is a dusty, square man who moves in a choppy claymation manner, like a character in a Gumby cartoon. Yeah, but the water loop. Right, Larry. How do we make sure it reaches the lower floors? I didn't ask you that, Larry. So, it's the chiller? Right, Larry. The chiller, then? I didn't ask you that, Larry. And Bob, how many men will it take? What is it gonna cost us? Put in the requisition. Larry, we need to get his going, Larry. This isn't gonna be a problem now, is it, Larry? Today, we both approach the same old-fashioned coffee pot at the same time. The one with the burnt-in brown crust on the bottom from warming stale coffee too long without the burner being turned off. These have gone out of style, but are still seen these days in the waiting area of every dingy car mechanic's shop. I wait for Jeremy to get his cup and then fix mine. I add in the processed Coffee Mate fake creamer and add some stevia fake sweetener to taste. Staring down at the putrid brown coffee in the styrofoam cup under the unnatural overhead lights in the subterranean room full of pumped-in air, with the Coffee Mate clumping up into little floaters as I stir, I am certain that no living creature would take part in such a deadening ritual. The coffee tastes like arsenic. The overhead lights penetrate my skull and char my brain, which caramelizes into brown residue, like the stain on the bottom of the coffee pot. The stilted silence is intermittently interrupted by phones ringing on the floor. It reminds me of the secure unit of a nearby Bellevue sanitarium, in which invisible orderlies stand ready with concealed blackjacks and expandable riot sticks in their coats, all for the too frequently needed crisis intervention. My job is to maintain the look and feel of the facilities and ensure a comfortable and high-quality environment. I have no knowledge of plumbing, electrical, or carpentry, but I decide when specialists in these areas are needed to fix a problem. I have no knowledge of snow removal, office cleaning, on-site and off-site data storage, supply reorder processing, or furniture and decor, but I specialize in assisting the operations manager with managing all of these tasks at 4:11 p.m. The role of facilities suddenly becomes temporarily obsolete. The fluorescent lights overhead unceremoniously flicker, hiss angrily, and go dark. So do the computer screens, the phones, everything. The elevators are stuck mid-floor. Trains in subway tunnels slow to an abrupt and jarring stop. It is as if a blood clot has become lodged in the left main artery, cutting off blood flow to the heart. The pulsing beat of the metropolis slows. Do-dump, 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 and then stops. I walk all the way up to the 22nd floor. As I climb the stairs, the sweat coats my chest underneath my white button-down shirt, which begins to seep through. I finally come to the floor where our cohorts in purchasing sit. A little color returns to my face from the climb. There is an old-fashioned table radio on the darkened conference table, streaming out news from 1010 Winds AM radio. Walking in, I scream out, "Bill, Bill, you there, Bill?" "Sam?" he asks. "Bill, what's going on here?" I say. "Blackout, Sammy boy. The whole East Coast is down, and part of Canada," Bill says. "What the hell caused it?" I ask. "They are saying some trees in Ohio brushed against a high power line and overloaded the system," Bill says. "How'd you like that? A strong gust of wind and some tree branches have sent us back to the Stone Age. So, it's a vegetation management issue. Human error," I say, walking out into the hallway. I can hear the screams of a woman trapped in an elevator in between floors. She is screaming for help. I take off my shoe and use it to pry open the closed elevator doors. Peering in, I cannot see anything but the black interior of the car from above, where there is a small opening down into the car. "Help! Help!" she screams. "Are you okay?" I ask. "Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Please get me out of here," she says. "What's your name?" I ask. "I'm Michelle," she says. "And where do you work?" I ask. "On the 59th floor," she says. "Okay. We are going to get this sorted out. Get you out of here. I'll stay and talk to you for a few minutes until someone comes. Why don't you tell me what is going on with you? I'm so scared. I want to check in on my daughter, but I don't know what is going on," Michelle says. "I don't know either. The lights, the electricity, it all just died," I tell her. "Someone said it is a power grid failure. Some trees downed a high power line, and it overloaded the system. My God," she says. "It is so dark in here. And I think of how dark the bleached corridors and office suites are, but in a different way. A firefighter comes running up the staircase I just exited from. He stands at attention, like a superhero in a comic book, larger than life, totally calm, in command, assured. He must be one of the last of the living. "Someone's here, a fireman," I say. Even though it is summer, he is wearing the traditional tan top coat with reflective taping. the fire hat, and is holding a crowbar and a hatchet in his enormous left hand. He is a big fellow of at least 6'4", strapping. He pushes me to the side, reaches into the elevator, clasps the woman's arm, and pulls her out in one yanking pull. She scuffles her feet as she finds footing on solid ground. I give Michelle a hug. She cries on my shoulder and says, "My darling Rebecca, I don't know how to find her." People are walking home, walking the streets, I say. Just walk with them. I'm sure she's doing the same. I head back down the stairs to the maintenance room. Arriving in the maintenance room, I see Gina chewing on the end of her pen and tapping her left foot nervously. Her eyes are wide and inviting, and I feel a thumping in my chest. Can't be, I think. A sign of life? "Where have you been?" she asks. "I went up to purchasing to see if anyone knew anything," I say. "And fucking left me down here with Greg?" she asks. "I'm sorry. I needed to check things out," I tell her. "What do we do now?" she asks. "I can't get back to Riverhead tonight. If you want, I can come and stay with you. Walk back, keep you company." My heart is echoing in my chest. I can feel the warm blood in my ears. It is almost as if I am a living creature, still endowed with a life force and a will of my own. "You'd do that?" she asks. "Would I do that?" I think. "Are you kidding?" Of course I'd do that, in a heartbeat, without question. But I don't want her to know how keen I am on the idea. "Sure, I've got to sleep somewhere," I say as casually as I can manage. Gina and I walk down Lexington Avenue in silence at first, taking in the sights and sounds of this once-in-a-lifetime moment. The daywalkers are shuffling along in abject confusion. The dislocated bodies rattle, bone on bone. The breathless friction of the arthritic joints, gritting from lack of use. They all look blankly forward at the footfalls of the other daywalkers. A bawdry display of sudden clemency. Inmates freed from captivity, grumbling at the loss of their comfortable bondage, their predictable hillatry, and now they are cast asunder into a concrete desert, wandering, listless and free. But free to do what? And free to go where? Some of the more recently dead voice words of encouragement. "We're gonna make it out of here, all of us, together. We're New Yorkers." Some others ask, "Where shall we go?" And yet others speculate, "There will be shelters set up when we get back out of Manhattan." The strange thing, the thing I can't wrap my head around, is that everyone, by some internal navigation system, automatically is fleeing the city, the beating heart of the metropolis. No one wants to stay in Manhattan overnight, not even the ones that live here. Does anyone live here? Is it even a real place? It seems now to be a work camp, a prison to be escaped, a liminal space that can't be lived in. An Alcatraz made of bricks and mortar and steel and marble. The parade of the undead proceeds forward with unexpected charity and unity, even if it is lacking entirely in life. The bodega clerks are out in the streets handing out Poland spring waters and plates of food that will spoil. There are police at intersections, directing traffic, furiously screaming and waving their hands to stop cars from crashing without traffic signals. There are buses taking folks out to Long Island. The blazing late afternoon sun burns with a surreal intensity. A full day of baking turns the pavement hot and causes waves of heat to radiate up from the road base. The buildings sit like impotent ruins of a bygone age, dark and useless relics. And for the life of me, I can't understand their use or purpose, which suddenly seems so strange. That all these people would travel from places too far to reach on foot. Travel for hours each day. For what? To assemble in these ghastly concrete prisons like inmates? To have their lives consumed by a machine of consumerism that eats its own young? For what? As we get into Murray Hill, we turn left on 32nd Street, everyone going the same way. We are all headed to Brooklyn. What an adventure, Gina says. And I remember that time I took her to Mets Stadium because I had extra tickets to a Dave Matthews show. I remember how she hit my arm when the opening band was playing. It had been August then, too. We'd hit each other with playful jabs, like school children, back and forth, all night. We'd gotten really carried away with it. So much so that we both had armfuls of bruises the next day. The tension of what we both really wanted to do had been palpable, but neither of us had the courage to act on it. We turn again at Kips Bay, overlooking the FDR, and head south toward the Brooklyn Bridge. Where do you live in Brooklyn? I ask. Oh, just down in the Heights, near the courthouse, over on Remsen Street, she says. We continue walking as the crowd of the undead thickens into a veritable street mob, clogging 2nd Avenue, so tight with people we are fit to bursting. I put my arm on Gina's shoulder and hold her close, keeping her next to me. That feels nice, she says. I don't want to lose you in this mess, I say. In time, we come to the Brooklyn Bridge. It is a crazy spectacle. The bridge is swaying from the foot traffic. It is jammed from one side to the other, with people crossing on foot. There are helicopters overhead, filming the exodus. The mood has changed, and some of the daywalkers are shaking off their heavy, hebetudinous slumber and waking as if from a dream. Their faces are full of smiles and laughter. I haven't seen such wide-eyed impetuosity outside of a music festival. It is like the Dave Matthews concert I'd went to with Gina. They all seem happy, hopeful, alive. As we arrive at Gina's 7th floor walk-up, a dingy place, she smiles and gives me an impromptu kiss on the cheek. She grabs a bottle of Meiomi Pinot Noir and 2 plastic cups, and we head outside where it is cooler. Out in the streets, it is like a festival. We are in a magical realm. People are dancing and singing. Buskers are playing. People are singing along. This is how the city was meant to be. We walk down to O'Keefe's, and we sit down outside and neck like kids in high school. "Hey, Sam," she says. "Yes, Gina," I say. "Don't leave me," she says. I smile. And at that moment, I know that I am never returning to that office building again. My undead body finally shakes off the curse. Do I remember how to live? The gates of hell. Jaxby staggered through the desert with 2 empty water jugs in his backpack. But the heat weighed him down. The protein bars were long gone, but that was just as well, because he couldn't have swallowed them anyway. He didn't have any saliva. Step by step, he began to accept that he was going to die. Buzzards circled the sky, watching their supper cook. All he had to do was lay down. His legs and feet wouldn't hold him up much longer. Soon, he thought, the landscape that hadn't changed since he began this journey was suddenly different, as something appeared ahead of him that he wasn't expecting to see. That shouldn't be there, he mused. But his painful eyes widened at the lights. They shone brighter than nighttime Reno, though it was still daytime. Mirage came to mind, but he tamped it down and staggered on. Hours earlier, Jack Isby's car had broken down on Highway 50 in the middle of Nevada. The engine light came on first. Then the radio stopped playing Hotel California. When the world whited out amidst blasts of steam from the engine, he pulled over and panicked. He'd never seen so much steam, and with it came a smell, something that smelled like jail. He wasn't going to make his court date on time. That meant jail. When the steam dissipated and he could see again, he got out and opened the hood of his 2013 Subaru. He knew nothing about cars and didn't know what he expected to see or find. But that's what people did. Perhaps he'd find a card that read, "You receive a second chance. Try again." Despite his lack of hope, he returned to the driver's seat and tried to start the car. Not even a click. There wasn't a signal on his phone, but he dialed 911 anyway. Nothing happened. Jaxby, or Jax for short, unfolded his paper map. How far back was that sign that pointed to the name of a town? Here. Since the road on the map dipped downward, then up again, he figured he was on the upside of a U. He thought it would be quicker to backtrack if he cut straight through the desert instead of keeping to the road. If he used his compass and held true, he should have no problem reaching the opposite side of the U. And besides, he had come prepared for an emergency like this. Or rather, Angelina had prepared him before he'd left her in Reno. He shouldn't have gone there to see her last night, not with this court date looming. She told him not to come, but he became suspicious. She was trying to keep him away for reasons other than his well-being. There had been no reason for his lack of faith. He'd found her alone, watching television, and she made him glad he came. He didn't tell her he'd raged out of his mind with jealousy for the entire 6-hour drive and would have bodily injured whoever he'd found her with. He had been able to hide that part of himself from her so far. Or maybe not. Maybe he'd blamed her for sleeping late. He packed the 2 one-gallon water jugs and a box of protein bars into his backpack. He placed a wide-brimmed hat on his head and wore long sleeves to protect his face and arms from the sun. There was a blanket, too, and Jax shoved it in with the other things, then started out on foot, with his sunglasses set firmly on his nose. After 2 hours, he wondered how one body could sweat so much, and his legs and feet already ached. He drank water freely, without bothering to conserve, figuring he was almost there. He had to be when he faced the same landscape another 2 hours later. The second water gallon was more than halfway gone. He sang to keep his mind off his dilemma. Eventually, his thoughts envisioned his lawyer scowling in the air-conditioned courtroom as his client, Jaxby Johnson, never showed. The road rage offense had ended with a death and infuriated him whenever he thought about it. Mance Rayfield had started the altercation and had provoked him not once, but 4 times. 4 times, Mance had tried to run him off the road. On the 5th try, Jax outmaneuvered him, and Mance's big, bad Silverado tumbled down into a ravine. Jaxby's Dodge had followed, but he made it out with only a few scratches. Mance didn't make it out at all. He got what he deserved. As far as Jaxby was concerned, it was his lawyer who bade him to show remorse when he appeared before the judge today. Now hope lay ahead, and Jax used every last bit of his strength to get there, determined to reach the lights. He crawled his way through the last part of the journey and arrived on his knees on the road between 2 brightly lit saloons facing off from opposite sides. The road disappeared into the landscape in one direction and ended here. Despite his pain and suffering, Jax laughed at the ingenuity. One saloon glowed a white, brighter than the sun on the desert sand, and was aptly named the Pearly Gates. The other was lit with orange and blue flames. The Gates of Hell was posted on its entry. The Pearly Gates door opened, and someone came out. Jax glimpsed a room filled with people and wondered where all the cars were. Perhaps they were bussed in, and later a bus would arrive to take them back. "My name is Peter," said the man from the Pearly Gates. 2 people dressed as angels helped him up. and brought him inside. "My name is Jaxby Johnson. Do you have a phone I could use? I need to call my lawyer." "We have no phones here," said Peter. "Everyone asks, though. What happens if there is an emergency?" "We have no emergencies either. Please excuse me while I get my book." Jax was given cold water and a small cake. "Angel food," said the angel that served it. Jax was feeling much better by the time Peter returned with a tome. "Read it," Peter told him. "At the end, you'll have a choice to make." Jax looked at the book, entitled Jaxby Seth Johnson, with his Earth date to the current date listed on the front. What was this? How did they know who he was? He looked for Peter, but Peter was nowhere. He opened the book. The first page brought up his first lie, the first candy bar he had stolen, the first fight he'd gotten into, and went on and on from there. He was served more cake as he read. A pitcher of water was refreshed. While the road rage incident with Mance appeared near the end, it wasn't his last offense. Angelina had tried to wake him that morning, and he'd pushed her away and told her to leave him alone. Then, later, even though she'd filled his car with emergency supplies, including the paper map and compass, he blamed her for running late and called her a foul name just before he left. It made her cry. She didn't deserve it. It was the only thing he felt remorseful about. Peter returned. Jax had 1,000 questions, but didn't get to ask them. "It's only for that remorse you are feeling that I am offering 1 second chance. Heed my warning. You won't get another, so choose carefully. Follow me," he said. Jaxby followed. They stepped outside. A mountain of boulders stood before them. Peter offered a silver hammer to Jaxby. "1 stone for each of your trespasses, and 2 stones for each of Mance Rayfield's misdeeds since you took his life. Once you turn the stones to dust, you may stay here. Think carefully before you decide, for my offer comes but once. If you decide against it, we'll disappear forever, leaving you to the mercy of the gates of hell." Jax was confused. Was this a dream? A mirage? Something didn't feel right. He looked over the pile of boulders, reaching to the sky. Changing them to dust with the small hammer Peter offered would take a lifetime. Who was Peter, anyway? "I don't feel I should have to pay for Mance's wrongdoings." "Very well," answered Peter. He took the hammer from Jax, and the world flashed out. Jax was back on the road, back on his knees. The pearly gates was gone. The gates of hell lay before him. Jax crawled forward. No one came to help him. When he pushed the door open, a crowd cheered. 2 people dressed as demons pulled him to his feet. Mance Rayfield stepped out and punched him in the face. The crowd booed. Jax punched him back. The crowd cheered, back and forth, booing and cheering. Jax was tiring. He needed to rest. "You win," he said to Mance. "Boo," the crowd answered. Mance hit him again. The crowd cheered. I said, I give up, Jax said. The crown booed, on and on and on. All at once, a gate appeared in Jax's peripheral vision. He edged toward it, connecting a bloody fist to Mance's bloody nose. Another step, another blow. When he was close enough, he opened the gate and raced out into the desert. A sky of stars welcomed him into the cold night. Without warning, he was back in his Subaru, singing along to Hotel California, smiling in relief, until the engine light came on and the radio stopped. The world whited out amidst blasts of steam, and Jaxby pulled over. He opened the hood, tried to start the motor, packed his 2 jugs of water and his box of protein bars. He left the blanket behind. He wouldn't need it. This time, he stuck to the road and conserved the water. Maybe a car would stop, or a bus. Hours later, lights blazed from up ahead. When his feet gave out, he crawled. A buzzard cried out from the lonely sky. Only the gates of hell remained. The pearly gates was gone. For the first time in Jaxby's existence, he felt remorse. Remorse for everything. Dream time. The barren charcoal seas of Mare Crisium span the horizon in all directions. The vast Picard crater is the only natural feature of this desolate landscape. Its high outer ridges cast a long shadow across the crash site as our white, hot star races towards sunset and lunar night approaches. "Harper, put your jumper on," says Mama's voice. "It's getting cold." The earth looms large in the sky, about 20 times more massive than it should be. I take small, slow steps towards it, transfixed. That shouldn't be there. It's too close. Our planet is spinning rapidly. Each day only lasts 3 seconds. With each rotation, this beautiful blue marble becomes ever more obscured by wildfire smoke, noxious gases, and nuclear fallout, until the permacloud forms and engulfs our home world, suffocating my view. I leap up high in desperation and reach with straining fingertips for the earth. Floating 10 feet above the lunar surface, a gravitational tug of war fights over me. The mighty planet wants me to come home, but the proximity of the moon wins this match, pulling me back gently to its dusty surface. Our stricken Orion X command module now lies before me, casting a great silhouette across the faint backdrop of our galaxy. This impressive machine towers over me, yet we are both still dwarfed by the endless nothingness of the lunar surface and the infinite space beyond. I hesitate at the entrance hatch door. A familiar tightness across my chest warns me to back away. Death is close. But a promise is a promise, so I force a quivering hand against the frozen Palmport scanner. Nothing happens straight away. But sure enough, The warmth of my touch thaws the device until the emergency lighting illuminates the sensor pad and the outer hatch slides open. Taking a deep breath of nothing, I step in, shiver, and rub my arms as a ghostly chill runs through me. The inner airlock door is wide open to the main chamber. The lunar colony raiders who downed our ship have stripped it of all equipment. It's just a broken shell now, like me. This is usually the point when I awake, sweating and panicking. But this time is different somehow. This time, I'm ready to accept what has happened, to accept what I must do. Willing myself onwards, I creep around the other side of the central seating column. Burnsy's body is still strapped into his flight chair in full EVA suit, just as we were forced to leave him. The helmet visor is smashed, and I recoil at the sight of my dead friend's face. His one good remaining brown eye stares at me without seeing me. His features are perfectly preserved in the vacuum of space, with no oxygen or bacteria to do their worst. "All right, Harper," says Burnsy in his musical Welsh accent. "Took you long enough. Fancy taking this helmet off for me." Icy tears freeze upon my cheeks. "But I'll need to pull that shard out from your eye first. I'm bled out already. Just go for it." So I grip the metal fragment, once part of the ship's outer hull, with one hand and brace the other against Burnsy's forehead. There's a squelching sound as I ease it out from his eye socket. The gooey remains of his eyeball and some flesh and brain matter come out with it, making me retch. Burnsy doesn't move or make a sound until I have freed the 10-inch bloody dagger from his skull. I fling it away from us, exhale in relief, then twist off his cracked helmet. A pool of congealed blood oozes out with a sickly metallic stench. I throw up over my prison scrubs. "Ah, that's better. Cheers, mate," says Burnsy. "Hey, what's with the outfit?" "Solitary confinement. 1 year for sabotaging the mission." "Well, that's bollocks," he says. "It was your father, again. You weren't to know he was in league with those colonist bastards." I nod grimly, then clean my hands as best I can on my soiled uniform. Then, with great care, I remove both of his gloves and hold his freezing hands in mine. "I'm so sorry, Burnsy. I gave him the launch codes. It's all my fault." He reaches out to touch my cheek. "No, it's not. Your father tricked and betrayed you. Betrayed all of us. Come on now. No use crying. His love and compassion are more than I deserve. Tears are easy to wipe away. Guilt is not." I collapse into his strong, welcome arms. "I've missed you so much. I'll never forgive myself. Harper, this is not on you. Honestly, let it go." His undead hands gently prise me away then undo his harness buckle. Taking my hands again, the body of Morgan Burns stands up. Now let me go. It's time. I'm ready. I shake my head. I'm not. He holds out an old-fashioned, wooden-handled spade towards me. We promised each other, remember? It's time. Taking the spade in one hand, I turn to face the exit hatch. Come on then. We step out onto the moon's black surface. My whole body convulses, and teeth start chattering. So I put on the old green woolly jumper and sheepskin boots that Mama keeps by the veranda. Then Burnsy and I head out for a nighttime stroll under the stars. Hand in hand, we walk across the dusty front yard, past the crooked gum tree and battered old tire swing I once loved so much. We continue past the empty, rusty cattle pens and into the outback. The sweet honey aroma of golden wattle trees fills the night air. This is just how I remember it. Before the great firestorm rose everything to ashes, with the darkness of a new moon above. The magnificent celestial arc of the Milky Way rises above the domed silhouettes of the distant Kata Chuta peaks. Is this where you grew up? Asks Burnsy. Partly. This was Grandpa's station and the ancestral homeland of Nana Kira. We rest under the canopy of a pale river red gum tree, where Nana used to tell my cousins and me Dreamtime stories. Here, by this creek? Perfect, says Burnsy. We were happy, weren't we? In Australia, his face is healed. Younger. Like from our R&D lab days back in Perth. His long, dark, matted hair is back, as are the memories of those raucous times. My cautious smile turns into a big grin. Those were the best days. Remember the nights out we had with Eddie, Kathy, and the gang? They were proper banging, eh? He says. How about them drinking games we played? Like Moose and One Lifeboat. What? All the games that you instigated? Not to mention those rude rugby chants you had us singing through the streets after closing time. We laugh until we cry. Then we just cry, mourning our long-lost friends, our families, and the lives we once had. Taking him by the hand, I broach the unspoken subject between us. Burnsy, I'm sorry I never fully loved you, like you loved me. His longing eyes are too much to bear, so I look down and make marks in the dirt with a stick. I just wish I felt those sorts of feelings. I wish I felt them for you. He leans over and kisses me gently on the cheek. I turn my head so our noses touch and our eyes meet once more. My hands are on his muscular chest. He's not bodybuilder big, but lean, like a man who's spent years building machines with his hands and with me. He takes me in his arms once more. An alien sensation, an urge comes over me. So I kiss him back on the lips fuller, deeper. A light breeze rustles the eucalyptus leaves overhead, and their minty, woody scent rains down upon us. Starlight dances upon the unhurried ebbs and flows of the burbling creek. A distant pair of boobook owls call to each other with mournful hoots, as if for the last time. Afterwards, we hold each other, gazing up at the night sky through the gaps in the canopy. We lay like this for a long while, putting off the inevitable, until Burnsy passes me the spade again. I'm ready now, so I get up and start digging. Aren't you going to help? I'm dead, remember? Always an excuse. The ground is dry and hard, so Grandpa Handley helps instead. After a long while, just before the outback dawn breaks, Burnsy's shallow grave is ready. Climb in then, I say. But Burnsy doesn't reply. His lifeless body, short-haired, blood-stained, and missing one eye, is already laid to rest. Scooping up the tear-spotted red earth, I find enough peace to bury my best friend and say goodbye, just as I promised. Down under the Manhattan Bridge, overpass, running along the streets of Lower Manhattan, crossing over Center Street, I kept an even tempo. The sky suddenly darkened as heavy clouds covered the blue sky like spilled ink clouding out over parchment paper. I could have turned back and avoided the storm, but I needed to get my miles in. Post the numbers. Do the work. Think of that Starbucks cappuccino and the warmed-up butter croissant that's waiting for you. I had already gone 5 miles by that point, but 6 miles was my daily minimum, and I was hurting. Right calf cramping, stitch in my side, labored breathing. Count your steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tyson is the best. Tyson can't be beat. The training was the only place where the force of my will held sway. The only thing in my control. Ever since the accident, it was even more important to stick to the plan. Keep my health intact. For without that, there was no livelihood, no finding a partner, no future family, no legacy to mark the fact I was here and alive. Without that, I was nothing but an advertising account manager in an agency. The net purpose of my life being to create desire in people's minds and associate their pre-existent needs with a brand that had the answer to their woes. It is all snake oil, really. There is no such thing, no panacea. I learned that in the hospital. I kept asking, isn't there a drug or something to reverse that? Their heads shook. No? Isn't there anything that can help with that? Help the healing process? Their heads shook. Just rest and rehab and my will. Just work and luck. As I crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, I dodged an older Ukrainian woman with a shawl and a steel utility cart filled with groceries. A bunch of kids walking along with their heads down on their phones, smoking stogies and taking drags off vape pens, and dozens of sightseers taking selfies. None of them were turning back. None of them were chastened by the storm. And I wasn't going to abandon my planned training over some weather. I needed to get in my daily 6-mile allotment. I owed it. I couldn't come up short. Everything depended on consistency, inerrancy, and discipline. I remembered laying in the hospital bed after waking up from the induced coma. I remembered rehab for the foot drop in my left foot that wouldn't flex due to the paralysis of the nerves, the damned peroneal nerve that I'd never heard of until it became my nemesis. For a while after the stroke, I couldn't see from my right peripheral and experienced a kind of pause in my thoughts during conversations. Just lost my bearings and couldn't remember what was just said. In tests at the neurologist, I couldn't repeat a simple sentence, which made it hard to carry on a conversation. That is how it goes. One day, everything is normal, and then you get struck by lightning, or in my case, a Prius. Taking my bike out to buy groceries on a Tuesday night, I got sideswiped by a Prius and suffered head trauma that resulted in a stroke. The rain came forth in a downpour. The wind cracked like the lashes of a whip, and the cold exhalation of the river pulled the heat out of the autumn air. I felt the first warning droplets, sprinkles of mist, icy tendrils. Then they came harder, steadier, coating my forehead in a glaze of salty New York City rain, all acid and recycled Hudson River sludge. Truth be told, I alternated between the carrot and the stick. I'd count steps, give myself a little rah-rah stuff, and think of my after-run meal. But I'd be lying if I didn't own up to the fact that most of it was an evil drill sergeant saying, "Who are you kidding, you worthless loser? And your life is nothing. You are nothing. You're a fucking loser. Worthless. A piece of shit. Why do you even exist?" And worse. That is the voice, which has been more persistent since the stroke. And after the stroke, there were also occasional visions and hallucinations, usually malevolent ones, fears brought to life in the form of ghouls or ghosts, scarecrows or hobgoblins, just 80s B-movie stuff mostly. Nothing truly terrifying. A few moments later, the deluge crashed over my shoulders like shower water, running down my back, a furious gush of water, and the wind hit my face, buffeting me with unrelenting blows. And the wind slapped my back, muffling the street sounds and cocooning me in the isolating cone of rumbling storm sounds. It was isolating and unpleasant, the farthest thing possible from 70 degrees and sunny. When I finally came over to the Brooklyn side of the bridge, and found some city ground shielded from the wind by buildings, with sufficient overhangs to shield me from the rain. The air was cold and crisp, perfect autumn air, redolent of carpets of crunchy brown leaves crunching underfoot on the sidewalks. But I was already soaked to the bone. I made my way down into Dumbo, sailing along by buildings with Merlot-covered bricks on their faces, watching you as you go, and cobblestone streets that give back sound as you clomp along, as if they are conversing with you and warning of the things hidden in alleyways and liminal spaces amid the cityscape. I headed under the Manhattan Bridge overpass by Adams Street to where people were enjoying the cool weather at wooden picnic tables and congregating to enjoy the autumn evening. They were all dry and had arrived before the storm rolled in. Happy with themselves, no doubt, for their attention to the weather report on their iPhones. Applauded, I could not boast. I joined them and sat at a picnic table, drenched in cold rain. Steam coming off my face, my forehead, and my very breath. The rain was in my sweat-wicking t-shirt, in my Lululemon running sweatpants, and my water-resistant running shoes were squishing out water like a wrung sponge as I walked to the bench and sat down in a heap. A puddle of waterlogged defeat. An old Jamaican man directly across from me had a gray glass eye beneath drapes of dreadlocks. He was playing chess with a young black boy, school age, wearing a ball cap. There was a midget. He was a handsome fellow, square and black-haired with a side part, wearing a collared shirt and khakis, carrying himself with the deportment of a king. He was clean-faced, with a small mustache, giving just a hint of the rebel. I saw a red-haired woman in a green dress walking past. I saw a crow fly through the archway, down toward Pebble Beach. It was a surreal moment, separated out of time. And then, as I sat calmly, looking about, I heard a sound. It was a chirping whistle, a piping, a chattering screech. Chwee-a, pep-a, chwee, chwee. The sound came again, haunting, melodious, distressed. Chwee-a, pep-a, chwee, chwee, oop, chwee. Then on the heels of the sound was a mocking chortle. Oorp, qua, oorp, 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 qua. I looked about. I looked at the red-haired woman in the green dress who had sat down and was talking to a 7-foot-tall monster, a giant, who looked like an adult sitting at the tea table outside on the back lawn of a doll's house. They went on chit-chatting without a hint of disturbance. I looked at the Jamaican man with the dreadlocks and the glass eye. He moved his rook nonchalantly across the left-hand side of the board, capturing a threatening bishop with a satisfied smile. I could not see the little boy's reaction, but he was a gaunt boy, malnourished, with a Yankees ball cap. I looked at the midget, who was reading a book in the light of the golden hour, facing outward on the park bench he chose, oblivious to his surroundings. Did none of them hear it? Chui e pepe, chui, chui. Then I looked up and identified the sound. The thing that made it. It was perched, inverted, clinging with claws like meat hooks that dug deeply into the concrete of the archway, holding the sinuous body in defiance of gravity. Its coat was a brilliant golden color that shimmered like fall leaves coated in nail polish and adorned with 1,000 tiny shimmering gemstones. It glistened with a slight pink hue. Its tail was a lion's tail, through and through, a happy, wagging tail that was at least 2 feet in length, with a big pom-pom on its end. It had a spiraling circular mane from neck to shoulder blade that transitioned from white feather to golden fur, capturing all the colors of the palette in between. And its wings. They hewed closely to the torso, the muscular lion's torso, draping the sides, a gold leaf texture, reminiscent of the hammered, thin, unmistakable coating on bar ceilings from a bygone age that features the iconography of the architect's fancy in repeating patterns and frames the rooms in an unnatural glow. And the head. The head was the most haunting. An eagle's head. That regal head. The beak with flaring nostril holes, alternating in the light between bright canary yellow and deep amber. A thing of menace. And the eyes, big and raven-like, but sad. A killer's stare. Eyes that encompass the eddies of shame mixed in with the confident assurance of death itself. The black swirl of destiny that has come to pass. Chui e pepe, chui chui. The thing sprinted along the archway to the ground like a circus motorcycle in a cage, seemingly immune to gravitational pull. Its footfalls light and quick. Impossibly light and quick. And it was off toward Pebble Beach. I sprang to my feet and ran after it, running at a high tempo, not knowing why I was giving chase. At first, I could see it ahead of me on Adams Street, heading north toward Water Street, and I picked up the pace. It ran along the sidewalk beneath some scaffolding, and then leaped upside down, running along the underside of the scaffolding like a weightless mirage. I sprinted hard, and lactic acid was pooling in my legs. We bore left on the cobblestones of Water Street, and the creature was back on the ground, pulling away from me, leaping with long, fast strides over the cobblestones. My legs grew heavy and leaden. Just past Jacques Torres Chocolate, it grew so small in the distance that it became like a lonely speck of gold. Finally, the creature reached Pebble Beach and the great glass cube over Jane's carousel, and leaped again over the velvet stanchion ropes at the entrance and perched atop the carousel frame. I finally reached the attraction and ducked inside, leaning against the glass walls of the display to catch my breath. I watched as the creature circled around the top of the carousel. The carousel started up, and strains of old-fashioned music from the band organ floated over the river, mingling with the sound of crowds passing by. Da, dun, dun, da, dun, da, da, da. The 48 hand-carved wooden horses began to rise and fall as they circled Brooklyn Bridge Park. Chui e pep e chui chui. The alien visage of this wrangle creature, with the head of a old eagle, vocalized its haunting call and then regarded me, head motionless, at full height over its tucked-in and perched haunches, front legs straight, shoulders drawn back. It sat stationed on the far, ornamental exterior work beyond the moving mechanisms of the carousel, which spun beneath him. And it fixed its gaze and continued to regard me in eerie silence. Was this some apparition? A lengthy hallucination caused by my damaged neural veins? Or could this impossible vision be real? You dare to chase after me? It said, not in the voice of an ordinary man, but in a booming voice, like that of a great general. I thought it was a hallucination. I had to see if you were real. I said, this is no dream, boy. What stands before you has the strength of a lion and the wisdom of an eagle. I am the protector of great treasures. I test men's merits and search their hearts in hopes of finding, in any of you, the nobility and courage required. It said, well, I guess I'd best be going back home. I was just finishing up a run. I wasn't looking for treasures or claiming nobility or anything like that, I said, beginning to walk toward the door. Stop. Don't take another step. Are you telling me there's nothing your heart desires? The creature asked. Desires? Too numerous to mention. But right now, I just want my health back. A sliver of confidence, maybe, I said. That isn't much. What would you use this health for? What would you do with your courage? Run in circles? Aim for a promotion? Settle down with a girl? Is there nothing more that drives you than a hamster wheel? Some money to throw at creature comforts? And settling down? No sense of adventure? It asked. Not for nothing, but making rent in Brooklyn and starting a family in this day and age is an adventure. Let me tell you, I said. Enough, insolent little man. You see these horses on this carousel? He asked. I see them, I said. Horses are the natural enemies of us griffins, the griffin said. Why? I asked. Because horses are mindless servants that serve the will of the pure and the wicked alike. Lemmings, good-natured creatures, almost aristocratic in their complete humility and subservience, but to no end. Us griffin are creatures of purpose, and you, my friend, are giving horse vibes, the griffin said. So, what is my purpose then? I asked. A better question would be, what is the purpose? But at least you are on the right track, the griffin said. Okay, so what is that? I asked. I must be on my way now, but I will see you again, the griffin said. And it turned, and in a flash, the griffin jumped over my head, landed outside of the display, by Pebble Beach, and with long, fluid strides, like a leopard, dove onto the river and began churning across the water. Legs turning so quickly, it looked like the spinning wheels of a locomotive. The powerful wings opened, and it took flight, flapping those giant, golden, shimmering wings as it soared out of sight. I continued my run back home, churning my legs, a fire in my abdomen, heaviness in my legs, a drowsy, delayed hitch in my left leg's footfalls. And as I reached Williamsburg and was almost home, I suddenly collapsed. A light was shining in my eyes as I came to. A red-haired woman in green medical scrubs was flashing a light to test my pupils. Doctor, pupils constricting normally and dilating with the removal of the light, she said, looking down next to her. Monitor the patient for the next half hour. Order up an EKG. And let me know of any unusual speech patterns observed, the man said. The doctor was a midget. He had a commanding presence despite his small stature. As he walked out of the room, the nurse did a few more tests and then turned back to me and said, "Rest up. You'll need your strength." A few minutes later, a giant man with a huge forehead entered. He had to be 7 feet tall. He said, "I am here to put some heparin and warfarin into the IV drip. It'll just take a minute." The man placed the screw-on syringe into an input tube and pushed the drugs into my IV drip. Then he flashed a friendly smile and was off. Finally, a Jamaican man with dreadlocks and one gray glass eye walked into my room and started writing on the whiteboard on the wall in front of me. "Roger," he wrote on the board. "I'm Roge, like Rogie, and I'll be taking care of you these next few days. Just press down on that dar button if you be needin' anything, and I'll be right in to sort you out. Okay?" I nodded at the man as he left, and scanning the room, I saw a little black boy in the bed next to me. He was asleep, and his head was covered with a Yankees baseball cap. He lay there completely still, in a coma, or maybe sleeping, just as gaunt and frail as they come. I had taken my EKG tests, had been wheeled around for some scans, and then brought back to my room. Exhausted, I'd passed out for a bit. After coming to from a short nap, I heard it again. Chui. Looking before me in the room, I saw the griffin. It was seated in the corner by the open window, letting in the cool October air. "What's your why?" the griffin said. "What?" I asked. "You want to get better, right?" the griffin asked. "Of course," I said. You're going to need something a lot heavier than a Starbucks cappuccino and a croissant to put up with what this life's gonna throw at you. You're gonna need a lot more treasure to make the adventure worthwhile, the Griffin said. I don't know what that is, I said. There will be time, my boy, to find it, the Griffin said. But are you even real? I asked. I am real, if you believe, the Griffin said. But what is a purpose to live for? Give me an example, I asked. That is up to you, the Griffin said. And with that, jumped through the window, calling back, It's all up to you. And as he took flight, I felt a searing pain in my left shoulder. Chui pep chui chui, almost angels. I dare you. Meryl couldn't resist a dare. She never could. She opened the car door and ran out into the cemetery. It was a night in a million. Not fog, but low clouds hovered around the gravestones. So satisfyingly spooky. There were no stars, but the overcast sky above was bright with moonlight. Meryl could see her way just fine, and hid behind a tall stone that read, Margaret Lesko, 1840 to 1913. A woman who died over 100 years ago, and her stone yet survived. Here I come, said Lucas. Meryl held her breath to keep from laughing and put her hand over her mouth. What she'd meant to do was jump out when Lucas ran past, throw her arms around his muscular shoulders, and wrestle him to the ground. Then they'd kiss. And then she heard his footsteps running across the grass. He called her name while headed in the wrong direction. She was going to wail, Lucas, in a horror story voice. But several male voices interrupted from somewhere, and she held it in. Who are you? No, no! A gunshot, moonlight, shined through the kitchen window onto her mother's table. A vase of dead flowers with a little card on a stick lost its color in the pale light. A pile of used tissues surrounded a box of Kleenex used to prop up her senior picture. Mom? She called out. No answer. Mom? She opened her mother's bedroom door. Both her parents were asleep in bed. She kissed her mother's cheek, still wet from tears. Mom stirred and smiled without waking. Meryl walked through the halls of the high school, looking for Lucas. Her friends were just up ahead. When the bell rang, everyone disappeared into the classrooms. Meryl drifted into first-hour social studies and sat at her desk. Sue Ann shivered as she walked past and put her jacket back on. The words imports and exports were written on the board. Lucas's seat was empty. Lucas's parents and siblings stood outside the hospital room. Meryl tried to see inside room 314A, but a team of medical personnel surrounded the bed. Machinery breathed and pulsed lights. Lucas? She called. No answer. She could have gone inside, but she didn't want to interrupt the doctors. I love you, Lucas, she whispered. Autumn, and the trees had turned. A mildly wild wind rustled through the colorful leaves, backdropped by a steel gray sky. Merrill strolled through Charlton Park, kicking the leaves on the ground. During the summer months, roses filled the gardens, and on Saturdays, brides, grooms, and their guests filled the park with ceremonies. Now, the roses were supplanted by burning bushes and mums. Some weddings were still performed in the park during this time of year, but not today. It was Thursday and chilly, and no one else was here. Not even a dog walker. She walked to the playground and sat in Lucas's swing, the one he used when they came together. Here, they had slid down the slides and got silly dizzy on the old-fashioned merry-go-round. I dare you to slide head first. Lucas had taken her up on the dare, and she followed after him. Then they slid down the slide together in each other's arms. A police car drove slowly through the park, looking them over because they'd been making so much noise. It was only 8 o'clock, but dark settled early this time of year. The police station was downtown. Merrill walked past the desk clerks and the stairs, where they kept the bodies waiting to be identified by their loved ones. She wouldn't think about that. She sat down in the chair in front of Detective Greta O'Neill's desk. The pictures of 4 men sat on top of paper files. Merrill shuddered. "That's them," she said. But there were only 3. Who is this 4th man? When Detective O'Neill left her seat, Merrill read the report. It seemed Lucas had interrupted the execution of the 4th man, who'd been able to run away before Merrill got there. The 4th man was under protection as a witness to this crime and others. He owed a great deal of money to an organization of criminals. There was a jewelry store on the corner, a few blocks away from the police station. Merrill looked through the window at the rings, the same window she and Lucas had looked through together. The diamond with the golden heart was gone. It had been a small diamond, a 1/4 carat maybe, but Lucas had asked which one was her favorite, and she'd told him she loved that one. Someone said Lucas had bought a ring. Had he? Where was it? She looked at her hand, surprised to see it on her finger. She didn't remember Lucas giving it to her. It belongs to her. She should have it. Who said that? Lucas's mother? Merrill always had the feeling Mrs. Kessler didn't like her. Lucas would have wanted her to have it. Yes, Mrs. Kessler's voice. They had slipped it onto her finger at the funeral home and buried her with the ring. She glanced over her clothes and found herself not wearing the clothes she died in, but the dress she'd worn for her senior pictures. The same dress she'd worn to her funeral. So confusing to be dead at first. All her friends were there. Everyone from the high school she knew and didn't know. Every one of her relatives. Poor grandma. She didn't understand. Her parents were so sad. And Lucas's parents. Merrill ran out from her hiding spot behind the stone toward the sound of the gun. Lucas lay as still as the grave markers surrounding him. Blood ran from his head to his face. The man holding the gun was surprised to see her running toward him at full speed, yelling for Lucas. Unafraid, he lowered the weapon and smirked, nearly laughing. What have we here? He hadn't expected her to jump at him the way she did, and it knocked him to the ground. As he fell, she wrested the gun from his hand and shot. After that, one of the other two men put their hands around her neck and choked her life away. As she faded, she saw a bright light open wide above her head, and the gunman rushed toward it. Before he got there, a shadow whisked him away. The light waited for her, but Meryl stayed behind with Lucas. The red and blue lights came too late for her, but not for him. She rode to the hospital in the ambulance. Meryl sat on Lucas's hospital bed with her arms around him. His mother sat in the chair closest to the bed. His father sat beside her, and his two younger brothers sat in the room's wide window seat. No one spoke as the machines whistled and pumped. There's little to no activity in the brain. He may never come out of the coma. He will never breathe on his own. Spend as much time as you like with him. You tell us when. Lucas opened his eyes and smiled when he saw Meryl. The machines set off alarms. A doctor came in and checked Lucas's vitals, then shook his head at the family. He disconnected all the machines and left the room so Lucas's family could say goodbye. Meryl cried, while his family suffered through the realization that all hope was lost. His mother was the last to leave the room. The worst was watching Lucas work out that he was dead. "I'm here," she whispered. A bright light opened wide above them as they held each other. "Shall we go?" Lucas asked of the light. "Do you think they'll let us stay together?" They kissed and decided to stay a little longer. "We can always come back to the hospital and jump up into someone else's light," they reasoned. "We shall see." After Lucas's funeral, he wore a suit instead of a hospital gown. They found they could revisit any place they'd already been, including the movie theater. Every night, they kissed their mothers on their cheeks as they slept. It was years later, in October, on the road beside the cemetery, long past dark. A pair of headlights came into view and headed their way. "I'm going to scream this time," said Meryl. "I dare you." "I will." When the car was close enough, Meryl and Lucas stepped in front of it. Meryl screamed. Tires squealed and screeched, and gravel flew as the car came near to losing control and then stopped. "Did you see that?" the driver screamed. "I saw it," the passenger screamed back. The ghosts of those murdered teenagers that haunt this road every year. I think I even got it on video. If you're all right, then let's go. There's no signal out here, and I can't wait to post this. The Spooky Boogie. Halloween is a holiday that everyone knows well, because it's the only time humans and spirits can coexist. Every year on October 31st, the dead rise from their graves and walk among us. The demons crawl out from the shadows because the holy light holds no sway, and even the monsters come out to play. At first, there was bloodshed on both sides, but it didn't take long for humans to adapt to the annual phenomenon by dressing up in silly costumes to blend in with the evil entities. And oddly enough, it worked. When bloodlust is in a demon's eyes, they fail to see the obvious. Over the years, the tradition morphed into a children's fairy tale. And these days, no one bats an eye if a spectral spook passes by. Adults took on a responsible attitude and allowed their little ones to go out and enjoy the night. Soon after, a festive event called trick-or-treating came roaring into every neighborhood around the world. Every girl and boy would get candy if they simply knocked on someone's door and said, "Trick or treat." The evil creatures paid no attention to the humans and their silly ways. They couldn't tell friend from foe when they wore the costumes, or why one of their own would knock on a stranger's door and not tear them apart. It was a farce that became institutionalized in its absurdity. To each their own. As the world grew older, so did the Halloween fairy tale. The traditional holiday of trick-or-treating morphed into a health-conscious day when adults decided that too much sugar was bad for their kids. It became a hot topic for years, but the day of righteousness came when many children became obese. In the end, the simple solution was fair and just. The little ones could still go out on Halloween night, but instead of getting candy, they would get vegetables instead. It wasn't a popular decision, but it became law and was written in stone. The evil spirits didn't care one way or the other because they floated on with their once-a-year Halloween romp, stomp, and boogie. They still couldn't tell humans from demons, but occasionally a slip-up would occur. If someone removed their costume or mask in a spirit's presence, they were torn limb from limb without a second thought. This was a rare occurrence, but an important reminder to parents and children everywhere to always wear their outfits, no matter what. In the wee hours on Lame Street, Timmy Lawson sat before his parents while his mom, Amanda, adjusted his vampire cape. She saw his legs thumping and asked, "Are you nervous about tonight?" Timmy widened his and replied, "No, Mom. My Dracula costume is the best on the block, and I'm ready to go." He parted his mouth slightly to show his fake vampire teeth and snarled, "Arr!" Amanda looked at her watch and bit her bottom lip. Her blonde hair hid her face, but Timmy could sense her apprehension. "I'll be fine, Mom. I know you will," Amanda said. "I'm your mother, and I'm allowed to worry." Timmy folded his arms and frowned. "Mom!" "Fine," Amanda blurted. "You better get going before it gets too late." Doves exploded in Timmy's heart, and he jumped out of his chair. "Yay!" His father, John, who was always overprotective, lowered his evening paper and warned, "Before you go, I want you to be on your best behavior. And remember, no candy or sweets." Amanda parted her golden locks and echoed, "That's right, Timmy. Only vegetables." Timmy lowered his head and slouched. "No one gives out candy anymore. It's against the law." John reached up to his clean-shaven face and removed his black glasses. "That's true, son. But in this world, there are still a lot of people out there who don't follow that law. Just remember, humans are just as bad as those monsters, and perhaps a bit worse." "Okay, Dad." Timmy didn't fully understand, but his dad was a wise man, and he'd be a fool not to listen. "Your father's right," Amanda said. "We just want you to be safe." She knelt and placed a gentle kiss on Timmy's forehead. "Now go have some fun." A bright sparkle filled Timmy's eyes, and an eruption of freedom sprang from his lungs. He grabbed his empty pumpkin bucket and raced through the front door without saying goodbye. The cool night air brushed over his skin like a masterful painter, lightly kissing the canvas with a boisterous color. Lame Street was bustling with children dressed in their favorite costumes: clowns, unicorns, beasts, and all. What an awesome night. Lame Street was a small suburban community where every house looked the same, with trimmed bushes, mowed lawns, and perfectly placed trash cans that stood next to the residential mailboxes by the sidewalk. A place where everyone drove a Prius and worked 9-to-5 jobs. Everything was routine, and that's the way they liked it. As Timmy took in the scene, he noticed that his friends were waiting for him at the end of the driveway. Alice was dressed as a ghost. Her white bed sheet, with the eyes cut out, showed a sliver of red hair, which was a dead giveaway. The werewolf was Fred. There was no mistaking that, because he had an uneven stride and often lingered behind the others to hide his anxiety. Then there was Carrie, dressed in a silky black dress with a matching pointy hat, long fake nose, and a huge brown wart stuck to her right cheek. She was a witch. "What took you so long?" Carrie asked. "We've been waiting here forever." "Sorry," Timmy said, walking towards them. "My parents, I'm gonna stop you right there, pal," Alice fired. "We all know your parents are a bag of dicks, so let's go before the night ends. The other kids are already going home." Carrie gave Timmy a wry smile as their eyes met, and he took the lead down the sidewalk. "Okay then," Timmy said, with rosy cheeks. "Let's have some fun and get as many vegetables as we can." I don't like vegetables," Fred stuttered, bringing up the rear. The first house they visited was Mr. Sullivan's, their 4th grade math teacher. Timmy knocked 3 times on his oak door, and Mr. Sullivan laughed when it swung open. "Ah, what do we have here? A witch, vampire, ghost, and a werewolf. Trick or treat, Mr. Sullivan," Carrie yelled, holding out her black plastic cauldron. Sullivan smiled and said, "Well, don't you all look so cute?" He reached around the corner and revealed a huge basket of apples. "Here you go, children. I'm afraid I'm out of veggies this evening, so these juicy apples will have to do." Timmy extended a shaky hand and swallowed deep. "My parents said only vegetables. Fruits and veggies are a heaven's delight," Sullivan groaned. "I don't see the harm as long as it's not candy." He pushed the basket further toward the kids. Alice grabbed one and quickly took a bite. The sweet juices dripped down her chin, and she smiled. "See, they're not laced with poison, so grab one and let's go." Well, you wouldn't know right away, because the poison takes a few minutes to kill you anyway, Fred said, peering through his wolf mask. They all shared a laugh, grabbed an apple, and headed for the next house. "Thanks, Mr. Sullivan. See you back in school." "Okay, children," he said, watching them leave. "Be safe, and don't forget that quiz on Monday." The second house belonged to Jane Thatcher, leader of the neighborhood gossip group. When she answered the door, the kids saw a huge bucket filled with baby carrots. "Hello, kids. You all look nice." Alice held out her ghost bucket and watched Jane throw one baby carrot in. Plop. Alice narrowed her eyes and asked, "What happened to the big carrots we got last year?" Jane drew her lips in and took a deep breath. The kids leaned backward and flared their nostrils because her breath smelled like an ashtray. That's because she smoked a pack a day. Well, times are tough, and you can't blame an old lady for trying to save a little. "That's okay," Timmy said, holding out his pumpkin bucket. "It's better than nothing." Fred held out his wolf bucket and stepped back when he saw Jane place 3 baby carrots inside. He blinked rapidly behind his mask before noticing her ashen breath upon his brow. "There you go, sweetie. I think your costume looks the best. And everyone knows I like my men with a lot of hair." Ha, ha, ho. When he saw her yellow-stained teeth up close, Fred ran away. The others quickly followed, but they couldn't hide their laughter. "Don't forget to come back now, you hear?" Jane yelled. That was gross," Fred moaned. "Ha, ha, ha," laughed Alice. "I think she likes you." Timmy couldn't uncurl his smiling lips. "No, I think she loves you. She wants to pet your fur," Alice scoffed. "All right, guys," Carrie urged, taking off her hat. "That's enough. Fred didn't deserve that, and we have no right to make fun." Fred removed his fury gloves and shook the sweat out. He shuffled his feet, cleared his throat, and coughed. "Ew. I can still taste her rotten breath." Timmy removed his fake fangs and said, "Carrie's right. I'm sorry for laughing at you, but it was a little funny." "Yeah," Alice said, lifting her bed sheet to suck in the night air. "We were just pulling your leg. We're sorry." Fred swayed from side to side and said, It's fine. I guess it was a little funny. You know what we need? Alice muttered. We need some candy. That would be awesome. We can't have candy, Timmy said, looking at the pavement. Besides, no one around here gives it out anyway. Carrie nodded and gave Alice a pat on the shoulder. You're right. Getting vegetables every year sucks. And it would be nice to have some sweets. Yeah, Fred agreed. Suddenly, a deep, shallow whisper blew by the children, like a small flower floating in the air on a warm summer day. Did someone say candy? Stepping out from the nearby bushes was a small, slender man. His face was a carved pumpkin, and he wore a black top hat with a matching suit with gold trim, boots, and white pants. He held an antique lantern to light his way. The children were speechless. They had never seen a costume like his. Who are you? Timmy asked, breaking the silence. His eyes were fixated on the mysterious figure. Me? I'm Mr. Spooky, silly, he said, bowing. He wobbled over and peered into their plastic buckets. What's this? An apple? Carrots? Where are the sweet treats? Alice placed her hands on her hips, and her sheet ruffled in the wind. We're not allowed to have them. Where have you been hiding? Under a rock or something? No, Mr. Spooky said. He held up his lantern and uttered, I've been locked away in darkness for the longest time, but I found this light, and it has guided me here. Are you a demon? Fred asked, taking a step back. I told you already. My name is Mr. Spooky, and there is no other. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of lollipops. I have all the sweet treats you could ask for. Alice widened her eyes, and the sheet covering her face became moist at the mouth. Wow, Timmy shook his head when he heard his parents' words echo. No candy, only vegetables. The thought sent a river of snakes sliding down his side. We're not allowed to have any candy, Mr. Spooky. What? Mr. Spooky shrieked. No candy? That's absurd. Don't you know what day this is? Carrie stepped forward and brushed Mr. Spooky's hand away. She didn't want to hear any more of his nonsense. Look, Timmy's right. We can't have candy, no matter how much we want it. It's the law. If we break it, we'll be grounded forever. How rude, Mr. Spooky said. No child should ever be grounded. My candy will free you and make you fly like the birds in the sky. Look, man, we appreciate your offer, but we need to go now, Fred said. The children turned their backs to Mr. Spooky and left him alone with an upside-down smile. They didn't mean to hurt his feelings, but in their defense, they were trying to do the right thing. Mr. Spooky thought and thought as the children walked away. No child should ever go without sweet treats. I must change their minds. Wait! He called out. The kids stopped and turned. I have a spooktacular idea. We should do the spooky boogie dance. It always cheers me up. and then maybe you will have some delicious treats." Before the children could say anything, Mr. Spooky stuck out his butt and twirled around like a dancing clown. Timmy, Alice, Fred, and Carrie had a strong urge to run away. But they stood firmly and watched Mr. Spooky because he was just too darn cute. Before they knew it, he broke out into a song. "Everybody twirl your body. Do the spooky boogie. Clap, clap, clap. Throw your hands up now. And clap, clap, clap. Stick that booty out. And clap, clap, clap. Do the spooky boogie. Shuffle here and shuffle there. Do the spooky boogie. The spooky boogie." Mr. Spooky's song and dance intoxified the air like a poison mist, and the children soon found themselves twirling and singing along. Their minds were like a lost ship sailing into uncharted waters. The discovery of a newfound rebellion was at hand. Within minutes, candy rained down, much to Mr. Spooky's delight. "Oh, how wonderful! Sweet treats from the heavens above. Dig in now and enjoy the splendor." Timmy clenched his stomach and stiffened his jaw. "No? Our parents said no, but I say yes. What good is Halloween if we can't enjoy a sweet snack?" Mr. Spooky spun around and threw more candy at the children. Alice was the first child to give in to the wicked bliss. She picked up a chocolate bar and took a big bite. "Oh, this is wonderful!" Fred grabbed a piece of Laffy Taffy and bit into the sticky goodness. As it stretched an arm's length, he smiled and said, "This is good." Carrie and Timmy held out the longest, but after seeing their friends give in, they had to sample the goods. They grabbed a peanut butter bar and crunched down. No words came, but Mr. Spooky could tell they loved it by their upward smiles. "That's it, my lovelies, eat. Eat until you've had your fill of sugary sweets." Mr. Spooky twirled and swirled like a ballerina and watched the children devour the candy like a pack of wild dogs. They were in it deep now and munched away every ounce of the candy. They ate so much that they fell to the pavement. They were plump, juicy, and ripe. "Now that you've all had your fill, I suppose I shall have mine," Mr. Spooky growled, walking around their fallen bodies. "You all look so delicious." Timmy rolled over and mumbled, "No, you can't do this." Mr. Spooky cackled at Timmy's protest. He raised his lantern and smashed it down on his head. The impact did nothing more than shut his mouth. With another twirl, a thick plume of purple smoke filled the air, and Mr. Spooky transformed into a hideous demon. His sweet pumpkin face gave birth to devious evil that was hidden all along. He ripped his suit off to reveal a pair of old brown overalls that covered a dusty white shirt. His voice had also changed. It was deeper and more demonic. Yummy, yummy. You children are now full of sugar, just the way I like my sweet treats. Mr. Spooky reached into his overalls and pulled out 2 sharp kitchen knives that twinkled in the moonlight. Now, stay still while I cut you up to pieces. I can't eat you whole after all, ha 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 ha. Alice still had a piece of chocolate in her mouth, and as Mr. Spooky walked towards her, knives dangling by his side, she spat out the sugary treat. He carelessly stepped into the sticky goo and fell with a thunderous thud. His blade slid in front of Timmy and Carrie, and they grabbed them with lightning speed. Fred exploded to his feet and tackled Mr. Spooky so he couldn't escape. You're not going anywhere. Even he was surprised at his newfound courage. That's right, Alice yelled, standing. The one thing about sugar is that it messes with your mind and makes you want more. Yeah, Timmy said, holding his head. And we are still hungry. What? Mr. Spooky shouted. You can't do this to me. Mr. Spooky writhed back and forth, trying to break free from Fred's grasp, but it was useless. Timmy and Carrie seized the moment, plunged their blades into Mr. Spooky's head, and cut away huge chunks of pumpkin slices. He screamed like a dying cat. Alice and Fred stuck their mouths inside his skull and drank deeply with their sticky lips. They spat out the seeds and laughed. Timmy and Carrie continued carving away until their sugar rush melted away and ate what was left. The last thing Mr. Spooky heard was someone chomping down on his skull. Later that night, the children agreed to return to Timmy's house to watch some scary movies. They promised each other that they would never talk about what had happened. When they walked through the door, Timmy's parents asked, "Did you all eat your vegetables?" In one collective voice, they said, "Yes, we did."